train a-comin'. You don't need no baggage, you just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesel humming. You don't need no ticket, you just thank the people. Get ready, there's a train to Jordan, picking up passengers from coast to coast. Faith is the key, open doors and board them. There's hope for all among the love the most. There ain't no room for the hopeless sinner who would hurt all mankind just to save his own. Have pity on those whose chances are thinner. There's no hiding place for the kingdom's throne. So people get ready, there's a train a-comin'. You don't need no baggage, you just get on board. All you need is faith to hear the diesels humming. Don't need no ticket, you just thank the Lord. Don't need no ticket, you just thank the Lord.
This is a new day. This is a new day full of sound, light, and expectation. This day has been waiting for you. This day has been waiting especially for you, to embrace you, to guide you. This day has been waiting with open arms just for you. This is the day we have been given. Let's not waste it. Come now and let us worship together. And please rise in body and spirit as you're able, and we will sing our opening hymn, number 38, Morning Has Broken.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. Sweet the rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet pass. Mine is the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden saw play. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
Welcome, everyone, to the First Unitarian Church of Youngstown, also affectionately known as UUYO. I'm going to share with you a couple announcements from our weekly update, which goes out from the office via email on Fridays. If you do not get this email, please make sure to fill out one of the cards in the back of the pew in front of you so that we can send this to you. So here's some upcoming things. Next Saturday, we are hosting a meditation retreat. Oh, man, I wrote down his name, and now it's not on this one. Reverend Dyken Nelson, I think that's right, coming from New York City. This is Reverend Joseph Zen, teacher from New York City. He's going to come co-lead a meditation retreat with Reverend Joseph next Saturday. Here, downstairs from 7 a.m. till noon. Breakfast will be served, and we are asking for people to pre-register, so please let the office know if you plan to attend, and feel free to bring snacks if you come to share. You can also join it on Zoom through our Zoom channel, so those of you on Zoom, please feel free to come. I think it'd be helpful to register also on Zoom. There are 2 more scholarships left for the Racial Equity Inclusion Workshop, which is offered by the Wien Institute, Wien Foundation. We are asking for people to register. You can contact Reverend Joseph, who's here in the front of the sanctuary, or the office if you're interested. The whole training is virtual. It's 2 days, May 10th and 11th. And here's one, this is really an important one. So for the last 2 years, 2+ years, we've been offering Zoom services. When we had to shut down our doors to in-person services, we had to transition very quickly to being able to do professional grade, seamless services online. And we've had a really devoted tech team of Andy Crabb doing visuals, the AV part, with assistance from Lola Lewis, who has stepped up to help, and also Tim Raridan, who has pretty much single-handedly been doing the sound for all these things. Coming up in May, Andy Crabb, I don't know why he thinks he can do this, but he's taking 3 weeks off. Really. So he will be gone the 15th of May, the 22nd, and the 29th. And we've been asking for quite a while for some assistance we need some understudies for the tech team. Now we really need you. So if you feel that you have any aptitude or a willingness to learn, maybe not aptitude yet, maybe you just haven't been discovered yet, please, you can go upstairs during the service and watch today if you want, but also you can just go right up afterwards. Or if you're on Zoom and you're interested in serving in that capacity, please contact the office and let them know. But I just want to segue, this is the way I'm going to segue into a general plea for people to step up in their volunteer helping. So, I forget what year you said you came, Andy. I think maybe 2010. So Andy Crabb joined the church in 2010, and he comes in and he's just trying to be like a parishioner. And pretty soon he gets brought in to be treasurer, right? So then he serves as treasurer on the board. And then being treasurer segues into, so he's like vice president for a while. And then that kind of, I told you I'd need more visual height. And that turned into being president for a 2-year term, and then a second 2-year term. This is actually a real Russian chapka, by the way. Another 2-year term. Then another 2. Anyway, he ended up serving 6 years in all in the president's role, and then COVID came, right? So then it was time to devise a whole new computer system that we could use for, I can't even make this one stay up, for Zoom services. And then somebody had to buy all that equipment, and somebody had, I'll have to save this one for later. And then somebody had to install all that equipment, and then somebody has had to run all that equipment. So anyway, I think you get the picture. So the other thing is all these folks who serve in these capacities, and this is true for me too, I'm current president of the board, and I've been running the pledge drive for several years, and I'm soliciting for volunteers. We do it because we love it, and we love this church, and we love this community, and it's a beautiful thing to serve. But this is like a serious plea saying, we need people to step up. If you think it's easy to do what we've done, it's not. And we need more help, if not, more than we did in the past. So after the service, down in coffee hour, I will be at a table over on this side, soliciting names and interest levels of people. There's all kinds of ways you can serve here, whether it's landscaping or coordinating volunteers or helping source helpers for religious education, because that's another one I was going to add. So, where's the beret? So when Kathleen Hogue started saying she needed help with Ari Achilles, former dance teacher, stepped right up. But Achilles, you might know, is also always in the kitchen helping with coffee hour. So while he's like entertaining the kids, and the kids totally love him, and he's doing a great job, he's also needing to be helping with coffee hour. So anyway, just another example of the many hats we all wear. So anyway, please come talk to me about volunteering. And lastly, my last announcement is I'm very excited today to share the pulpit with Reverend Jim Ray, who's been invited to share his journey with us this morning and the commitments that have guided his life. Let's see. Sorry, I have to find the chalice lighting. I think I'm missing a page. No, here it is, I found it. This is called The Abundance Chalice Lighting by Dawn Skay Cooley. We light our chalice this morning, grateful for the love that we experience in this beloved community. May the flame light the way for all who seek such abundance.
Maybe, a story about the endless potential in all of us, written by Kobe Yamada, illustrated by Gabriella Baruch. Have you ever wondered why you are here? You are the only you there ever has been or ever will be. You have so much to offer. Maybe you will invent something that no one has ever seen before. Maybe you will build things that reach high into the sky. Your life is yours. Try as many things as you can try. See as much as you can see. Wherever you go, take your hopes, pack your dreams, and never forget. It is on journeys that discoveries are made. Maybe you will help others see the beauty in each day. Or maybe you will lift cheering crowds onto their feet. Do everything with love. Follow your heart and see where it leads you. Maybe you are here to shine a light into places that have been dark far too long. Maybe you will speak up for those who can't speak for themselves. Maybe you are here to help in ways that only you can. There will be struggles, there will be fears, and it won't always be easy. At times it will feel really hard, and you might make a mess of things. You may fall down. You may fail. But you will also get back up, and you will rise a little stronger and a little taller, because there really is more inside you than you know, and this world needs your gifts, your talents, your big ideas. And maybe you are just getting started. What if you are only scratching the surface of what you can do and who you can be? What if you have talents you haven't discovered yet? There is something powerful, even magical, about you. You already have everything it takes to do big things. Maybe you have no idea just how good you really can be, and maybe you don't know how much you matter. But maybe, just maybe, the world has been waiting for centuries for someone exactly like you. One thing is for sure, you are here, and because you are here, anything is possible. The end. It is now time for the children to go with their teachers to their classroom, where it may get loud because they really do have a lot of fun. You may need to close the doors.
So please join me now in reading the covenant of our church, which you'll find printed in the order of service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. So each month, we donate all loose cash and unmarked checks put in the offering plate to a nonprofit organization whose mission and actions are consistent with the UU principles and the mission of UUYO. For those in the sanctuary, there are silver plates near the exits where you can place your offering as you leave the service. There's also a donation link in the chat for the Zoom participants. April is National Minority Health Month, which is an opportunity to raise awareness about health disparities that continue to affect racial and ethnic minority populations, and to encourage action through health education, early detection, and control of disease complications. There are many organizations in the Mahoning Valley working to improve health outcomes and reduce health disparities, one of which is the Mahoning Valley Pathways Hub, the Hub. The Hub is a division of the Mahoning County Public Health. The Hub helps cultivate an environment in which everyone in our region can attain optimal health. As a nationally certified Pathways Community Hub, Hub partners with community entities to improve individual and community health outcomes. The model's success is largely connected to the use of certified, culturally congruent, and competent community health workers who often come from or are closely connected to the communities that they serve. UUYO's support for the hub will help the community workers and Mahoning County Public Health continue this important work to improve health outcomes and reduce barriers that have perpetuated inequities that impact families' ability to thrive. We will now receive the offering that supports the life of Youngstown, the Mahoning Valley, and our wider world.
Crimson flames tied through my ears, rolling high in mighty traps. Pounced with fire on flaming roads, using ideas as my maps. We'll meet on edges soon, said I, proud deep furrowed brow. But I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. Half-racked prejudice leaped forth, ripped down all hate, I screamed. Lies that life is black and white, smoke from my skull I dreamed. Romantic facts of musketeers, foundation deep somehow. But I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. A self-ordained professor's tongue, too serious to fool, spouted out that liberty is just equality in school. Equality, I spoke the word as if a wedding vow. But I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. In a soldier's stance, I aimed my hand at the mongrel dog to teach, fearing not I'd become my enemy in the instant that I preach. My pathway led by confusion boats, mutiny from stern to bow. But I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. Yes, my guard stood hard when abstract threats, too noble to neglect, deceived me into thinking I had something to protect. Good and bad, I define these terms, quite clear, no doubt, somehow. But I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. But I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now.
Please join me now in a few moments of meditation. It's a chance to lay aside the stresses of the week and just breathe together and just connect to the world through our breath. Our reading this morning is by the Reverend Dr. Tracy Keenan, the missional presbyter of Newcastle Presbytery, a Matthew 25 presbytery in the Matthew 25 Synod of the Mid-Atlantic. It's called Until Words Become Flesh. The air crackled with anger. The crowd was outraged over a grievous wrong and did not trust the authorities to bring justice. At stake was their sense of society's order. The man on the steps began to speak. His words gathered their anger, stoked it into fear, and into a frenzied resolve to act. Within hours, the mob stormed the building. The year was 1903. The crowd was gathered on a street in Wilmington, Delaware. A black man named George White had been arrested on charges of assaulting and killing a white girl. The man orating was a Presbyterian pastor named Robert Elwood. The mob broke into George White's holding cell, dragged him out, then beat, hacked, and burned him to death. Reverend Elwood was brought before the Newcastle Presbytery on several charges, but they were torn in their deliberations and ended up giving him an ecclesiastical slap on the wrist. The presbytery declared itself to be heartily opposed to the spirit of lawlessness, decrying the murder with which George White had been charged, but not the lynching of George White himself. Eventually, they found Elwood guilty of unscriptural preaching and inappropriate advertising. We look in horror upon the history of lynching in this country, with particular shame upon the story of a Presbyterian pastor inciting such a thing and the inadequacy of the presbytery's response. An anemic response to deep pain can be as lamentable as mob violence. Today, Newcastle Presbytery is a Matthew 25 presbytery, and like so many Presbyterian Church USA presbyteries, we are politically marbled, red and blue, and have many more white members than black. Our Montgomery group joined the Synod of the Mid-Atlantic on a pilgrimage to Alabama to visit the Equal Justice Initiative and the Lynching Memorial. Now we keep anti-racism in the forefront of our collective radar. We have voted to make anti-racism training mandatory for pastors and other leaders. We have opportunities for learning the American history we never learned in school and for book discussions. Much to celebrate. And yet, this is not merely about making white people feel guilty. Our faith was never supposed to stop at conviction. It is about redemption. It is about putting flesh on the ideological. It is about Christian compassion, which incarnates both the grace of Jesus and prophetic justice. Talk is a start. By itself, however, it is as inadequate as announcing that we are opposed to lawlessness. The real healing begins when we allow ourselves to be changed, when we recognize in our neighbor the very face of Jesus and actively work for justice. Until they become flesh, words are just words.
Thinking about the music this morning that I would sing before Reverend Jim Ray stands to do his morning message. I was thinking about Jim and the many hats that he has worn, and I was thinking about the fact that he had his history as a Presbyterian minister. And I first heard of Jim when I was the music director out at a small Presbyterian church out in North Lima. And I encountered this song that I'd like to sing for you when I was doing music out there. And it's one of the most beautiful songs in terms of its lyrics that I had heard, that brings together a message that I think really speaks to a really strong life. This is called The Summons. Will you come and follow me if I but call your name? Will you go where you don't know and never be the same? Will you let my love be shown? Will you let my name be known? Will you let my life be grown in you and you in me? Will you leave yourself behind if I but call your name? Will you care for cruel and kind and never be the same? Will you risk the hostile stare should your life attract or scare? Will you let me answer prayer in you and you in me? Will you let the blinded see if I but call your name? Will you set the prisoners free and never be the same? Will you kiss the leper clean and do such as this unseen? Admit to what I mean to you and you in me. Will you love the you hide if I but call your name? Will you quell fear inside and never be the same? Will you use the faith you found to reshape the world around? Through my sight and touch and sound in you and you in me. Lord, your summons echoes true when you but call my name. Let me turn and follow you and never be the same. In your company I'll go where your love and footsteps show. Thus I'll move and live and grow in you and you in me. Thus we'll move and live and grow in you, you in me.
Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. My presence at the speaking of those words by Martin Luther King Jr. years ago was to dramatically change my life. What that was to mean for me, I had no idea on that day August 28 of 1963. I certainly could not conceive of the impact of that day upon me when I received a phone call some months earlier. Hello, Jim, this is Reverend Jay Logan calling from Decatur. I had met Jay once since I arrived early in February '63 to assume a position on the staff of the McKinley Foundation at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana to be a campus minister there. McKinley existed to provide a ministry to students, faculty, and staff at the university through programming at the foundation and the McKinley Presbyterian Church, and Jay Logan was on the board of McKinley. Jim, some of us clergy are going to go to the March on Washington in August. I'd like to invite you to go, Jay said. What's that? I asked him. As he spoke, I listened carefully, for I had come to respect this Presbyterian minister. He spoke about a gathering of 200,000 persons, black and white, from all backgrounds and perspectives, who on that day in our nation's capital would, by their numbers and their speeches, their songs and energy, petition our government to pass what would be proved to be the historical civil rights legislation. I had never come close to doing anything like this. Drive all night from Illinois with 2 carloads of white clergy to be swallowed up in a vast throng of blacks and whites. Why should I go? I thought to myself. But as I listened to his words, how can I not go, was my response. To my hesitation, I said, count me in. And with those words, my life would never be the same again. Finally, the long-anticipated time was here, a day filled with walking back and forth between the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial, punctuated by speeches, songs by folk singers I'd heard but never seen, and then the introduction most of us had been waiting for. A. Philip Randolph, president of the Railroad Pullman Porters Union, said, "I give you Reverend Martin Luther King, D.D." And there he was, several hundred yards in front of me, the recognized leader of the civil rights movement. Dr. King, in only a few hundred words, painted his dream for America that brought tears to the eyes of many who had been long in the struggle for the basic freedom to which his words pointed. He was reminding us that our name is being called. It had been a day such as I had never experienced. I knew almost nothing of the deprivation, the degradation, despair of a great majority of those present simply because their skin was darker than mine. Now I heard the words that meant everything to them and which would send me into places I had never dreamed of. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. I was born in 1930 and I grew up in Columbus, Ohio during the Depression. When all of the 30s, my father had no permanent job, and each of my parents' dreams were gone with the Depression. We lived in many different places in the city, always moving into poorer and poorer sections of that city. The backs of factories and alleys was where I played. Yet, like many of you, we kids didn't know we were poor. There was food on the table and clothes on our back and friends to play with. We truly only experienced the pain of poverty at moments such as the time that my dad broke open my brother's and my piggy banks because that's all we had to make the meal. We kids, when we grew up, went to Lyndon McKinley Senior High School. There were over 1,200 students there, only about 5 were African American. I don't recall any racial incidents, though I knew most of them did not have the kinds of experiences which can prepare one for a more normal interracial multicultural relationship, which we desperately need today. Those insights would come later for me. Our family joined Core Presbyterian Church, and that began an important faith-building time for me. I did well in high school, and the only option for college was to go to Ohio State University for $45 a quarter and live at home. I began in the fall of 1948 with a major in radio speech, wanting to be a sports announcer. I spent 2 years at OSU, but didn't do very well. The highlight of my first 2 years there was what seemed a giant step in my career direction when I was asked to help Jack Buck broadcast the OSU basketball games during the 1950-51 season. At the end of the season, Jack invited me to join him in broadcasting the football games in the new press box in the Ohio Stadium that coming fall. Yes, I said. My yes became a resounding no several months later as I was drafted into the Army during the Korean War. This was the first of a number of interventions which would continue to change my life forever. I was inducted in September '51. I went to Fort Riley, Kansas for 16 weeks of basic infantry training, but basic training was not for me. I knew I was not cut out to be a combat soldier. When we did bayonet training and I had to make guttural sounds as we stabbed into a padded post with the sergeant saying, "Come on, make louder noises, go, get him." I knew that if I ever got to that point in real combat, I probably wasn't going to come home. But amazingly enough, another intervention took place after the end of basic training that changed the future of my life. For no reason at all, I developed a foot infection. That red line went up to the knee from the foot, which put me in the military hospital for 7.5 weeks. My company shipped out to Korea into severe combat, and many of our guys were killed, I learned later. Why had I not been with them? I would ask this question several times when life-changing interventions took place. I'm not a fatalist, saying it, well, it was God's will. No, there are too many other human factors present to simply blame or thank God. After my hospital stay, I went home on leave for a week, and then I got on a troop ship to Korea and was put into the Prisoner of War Command. My company went to Youngstown. Do means island, Youngstown Island, 1.5 miles long and 1/2 mile wide. And based on my experiences there, it really turned out to be an ugly American story. The Corps of Engineers came to construct the prison enclosures for 8,000 North Korean prisoners. There were 3 villages, I say were, on that island, but we forced them all into one. And we just tore up that island building those prisons. Korean people had lived on Rancho for countless years, but no one told them that we Americans were coming. But as time went on, God's intention for me was never beginning with violence, but with the call to be faithful as God's people. But there I was on that island, a young Christian man who knew enough about Jesus and his teachings to begin to question, what am I doing here? What are we experiencing? I was pulling guard duty with the people in my company, and that meant at night I would be in a post outside one of the prisons with a South Korean soldier. And of course, we couldn't speak to each other. I'd point to something, what's that, what's that? He'd tell me in Korean, and I still remember star is peel. So we did that for a long time. And then one day I had an opportunity that again was transforming. I was asked to join another guy, John Reagan from New Jersey to start a library for our company. There were 2 Quonset huts up above our company area up the hill. That island was full of hills. And there we put together books, magazines. One guy even ordered the Columbus Dispatch, where I grew up, and the Columbus Dispatch came to that library. And one day we got the news that we would be able to get 4 prisoners to come up a couple of times a week and do cleanup work around those 2 Quonset buildings up there, our library, the PX, and a little rudimentary gym area. Well, we couldn't speak Korean and they couldn't speak English. So John and I said, well, let's give them some funny American names. So we called them Oliver, Wendell, Elmer, and Percy. And he became Buck Rogers and I was Flash Gordon. And that's how we knew each other for the longest time. And then one day, after we learned that the armistice had been signed and that someday soon we would be going home, I was walking down in our company area and I heard a voice call out, "Flash Gordon, GI, Flash Gordon." And I looked up and there was Oliver in the back of a truck. And I said, Oliver, how you doing? He had a big smile. He says, "Pretty soon me go home. You same? And I said, yeah, me same. And I've thought ever since then, what a marvelous human contact. If we had kind of brutalized those guys when they came up to help us clean up around the building, do this, do that, he wouldn't even have mentioned my name. But we treated him kindly, and he wanted to make sure that I knew I was going to be going home because he knew he was going to be going home. That really made an impact on me. I've thought about that over the years, that how it is that God puts us in different places with different kinds of people and different things begin to happen. And all of a sudden your name is called. Well, I left the Army in September of '53 and took a job in Columbus and returned back to Ohio State to finish my work there. My experiences in Korea led me to want to go into ministry, so I graduated from YSU in 1956 and entered McCormick Theological Seminary in Chicago that fall. I did well in my classes, and I now realize that the study of Old Testament prophets had an impact on me that surfaced in all my work in civil rights, peacemaking, and social justice issues, because those prophets were always reminding us that God is calling our name wherever we are. I was married during seminary to Barbara Gerlach. I graduated in 1960 and took a position as an assistant minister at the First Presbyterian Church in Galesburg, Illinois. And our 2 sons, Tim and Peter, were born there. After several years, and perhaps the second most important intervention occurred. A former classmate of mine at McCormick had taken a position in campus ministry at McKinley Foundation. And he called to say he was going to take a pastorate, and might I be interested in replacing him? Well, that came to pass, and I started at McKinley on February 1st, 1963. And it was quite a time on that campus, as it was all across campuses in the 60s. It was an exciting time to be in those places. But as one of the leading folk singers of the day, Bob Dylan, sang, "The times they are a-changin'." And they certainly were on campus as hints of the Vietnam War arose and the struggles in the South over civil rights became more strident and visible. When J. Logan's Call came to me and my colleague Larry Hill, Jim supported the 2 of us making an epic trip, even though his board thought it was crazy, but he said, no, that's important. And so when I got that call, my name was called. And when we returned, both of us, we were involved in the civil rights struggle on campus and in the community. I found myself doing something for the first time. I was walking a picket line with some of the university faculty that I knew in front of the university president's home to protest the very poor record that they had of hiring black workers on campus at every level. I became chair of the local War on Poverty board, and they began to do a better job of hiring black people. I went with a local pastor friend of Hattiesburg, Mississippi during Holy Week of 1964. A national call had gone out again. I got this call for clergy to walk a picket line in front of the county courthouse so persons of color could register to vote without being hassled. I was fearful every day as we walked from 8 to 5, the fingers going to white people walking by, giving us the finger, and heard and saw that we're not wanted there. We stayed a week in the black community where we were warmly welcomed. Back at the university, Larry and I and other campus ministers and university faculty and staff held workshops on nonviolent tactics for students who were going to go to Mississippi for Freedom Summer that night, that year in 1964. That was the program that our friend Staunton Lynn directed. That was the time that 4 civil rights workers were killed and buried in a dam in that state. And I look back now and know how dangerous it was for anyone to be involved in such confrontational work. And yet, without all those brave people, who knows where we would be now? In March 1965, I participated in the end of the voting rights march from Selma to the state capitol in Montgomery, Alabama, and heard Dr. King's very famous address there. And later that summer, I directed a group of 10 college students from around the nation doing voter education, registration, tutoring, and helping with a week-long health clinic. We lived in the Black Presbyterian Church in Amelia, Virginia, and we were engaging with black citizens to help them do this kind of work in Amelia and Nottoway counties southwest of Richmond. And the Klan became much more active when we arrived. In August of 1968, I received a Danforth Campus Ministry Study Grant, and I left my position at McKinley and went back to McCormick for a year of graduate study on higher education and the urban crisis. My year at McCormick was to reflect on the role of urban campus ministry to help urban universities better relate personally and institutionally with their urban neighbors and structures. My focus there was to continue to help that university humanize the city in which it's located. And subsequently, I served for 11 years on the staff of University and City Ministries, UACM, in Pittsburgh, and my work there was urban campus ministry at Pitt. Within a week of our arriving in Pittsburgh, I was in the streets with the Black Construction Coalition because African Americans were not being hired to construct either the U.S. Steel Building or Three Rivers Stadium. There we were by the hundreds protesting this blatant example of racism for many days, seeking resolution of this dire problem. Finally, the dispute was settled and black persons began to be hired. Truth had spoken to power. While at UACM, I was a key person in the Community of Reconciliation, COR, a multiracial congregation and one of 7 different ministry parts of UACM. COR became my worship and support base. I learned much from being a part of a very diverse racial and religious Christian fellowship. It was important for my wife Barbara and our children to be in the midst of such differences and unity. Many members of that congregation I learned had been with us in that Black Construction Coalition thing. As church people, they knew that God was calling their name and they were in the streets. Sadly, in the middle of my years at UACM, Barbara and I grew apart, and I know that much of this resulted from my commitment to the struggle for peace and justice. We tried to hold our marriage together but failed, and so we were divorced in 1975. We still are in touch with each other, and my kids and see their mother as much as they can. They're spread across the country. At one point during these years, I answered a national call for clergy to go into the agricultural fields of the San Joaquin Valley in Central California to stand in the support of the farm workers who were being threatened by the growers because Cesar Chavez was forming a union of the migrant workers. In August 1980, I left my position in campus ministry and started on the staff of the program for female offenders. They worked with women coming out of jail and state prison and did a marvelous job of keeping them on the dime and not losing their jobs. In July '83, I returned to my career in campus ministry and became the director of cooperative campus ministry here at Youngstown State. And out of all these prior experiences in the '60s, I began when I found an African-American YSU staff person. We started a racial awareness group, RAP we called it. It was a weekly dialogue group where we brought people, students, faculty, and staff of various different racial and ethnic backgrounds together for talking, personal sharing, and focus on common problems. And I still bump into people now and then who were a part of that and tell me how much that meant for them. During those years at YSU, I began a silent vigil for peace, standing by the rock in the core area of the YSU campus. That was a new venture, and at times I stood alone, but soon more people came to me and joined me. Later, I led an effort of students, faculty, and staff to place a peace pole on the campus core where many peace vigils and protests took place. I retired on June 30, 1995 from my campus ministry career and worked part-time at the little church in Lowville Church for a while. In 2002, in June, a marvelously wonderful thing happened. I married Sue Anzalotti, and that brought together a blended family of 6 children and now 14 grandchildren. The paramount importance of family, and with none of them living near us, finally brought an end for me to any formal ministry service. But I still continued with many volunteer efforts in places that needed peace and justice, with particular interest in the Palestinian-Israeli struggle. A trip to that troubled Holy Land some years ago made me aware of the desperate plight of the Palestinian people who have become refugees in their own country. Lastly, let me share briefly my faith perspective, which I have tried to demonstrate in these remarks. I believe that Jesus came into our midst as a now person, not a hereafter person. All my years of peacemaking and social justice work are modeled after him. His godly orders were what he read in his own home synagogue from the book of Isaiah. And here are the words he read to them. God's Spirit is on me. He's chosen me to preach the message of good news to the poor, sent me to announce pardon to prisoners, recovery of sight to the blind, to set the burdened and battered free, and to announce this is God's year to act. And then he told the worshipers, you've just heard Scripture make history. It came true now in this place. That was now. Jesus was not pointing to some distant future. The kingdom of God is here now. And they threw him out and tried to kill him. Jesus came to speak truth to power. Martin Luther King Jr. reminds us that our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. I close with these words of Emile Zola, which I also claim. If you ask me what I came into the world to do, I will tell you I came to live out loud. Let's be in prayer for a moment. Oh God, as each one of us know you in various ways, we give you thanks for this congregation, for these people. We give you thanks for an opportunity to serve you, each other, and those out there who don't know that anybody cares a ding about them. Use us, O God, in whatever way is possible. Help us to be grateful for one another and give us what we need to serve you and to love each other. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Jim. That was so beautiful. And now, please rise in body or spirit for our last hymn, number 108, My Life Flows On, in endless song.
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails the new creation. Though all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest around me roars? I know the truth it liveth. What though the darkness around me glows? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends in shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we keep in our hearts and share with all the world.
As you depart from this place, please remember the one great fact. You are loved and never truly alone.
Your hymnals and turn, if you will, to hymn number 118. And would you stand with me if you are able in body or spirit? And let's just rock this place a little bit with a little bit of this little light of mine. And oh my, we have heard a little bit about how a light can shine. This little light of mine it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, you know I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. I'm building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Building up a world, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. One more time. This little light of mine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine and shine. This little light of mine. This little light of mine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine.
Go up and help Andy and learn